Hello, I'm Nima Rajan. Halifax residents lined city streets to observe the police-escorted motorcade carrying the remains of the Canadian Forces Snowbirds member who died in a jet crash last week. Captain Jennifer Casey, a Halifax native and public affairs officer, died on May 17th when her Tudor jet went down in Kamloops, BC. The aerobatics team had been on a cross-country tour aimed at raising Canadian spirits during the COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he'll push the provinces to give workers 10 days of paid sick leave a year as the country deals with the COVID-19 pandemic. That appears to meet a key demand from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh in exchange for the New Democrat support in a motion to limit sittings and votes in the House of Commons through the summer. The Prime Minister says the Liberals will also work on other long-term measures to make it easier for workers to stay home when they're ill. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet says he is outraged that the federal political parties are using the COVID-19 emergency wage subsidy program for their employees. The Liberal and Conservative parties are already receiving the 75% wage subsidy, while the NDP and Greens have both applied but have not yet been approved. Mr. Blanchet says the program is for people and businesses who really need it, which he says is not the case for the Liberals and Tories. Those parties say they are trying to avoid layoffs as donations dry up. Meanwhile, MPs are once again deciding on how to conduct Parliament during the COVID-19 pandemic. The opposition Conservatives want a return to in-person sittings of the House of Commons, saying that is the only way to hold the government accountable. The Liberals are proposing 4 sittings a week using a hybrid system, with some MPs in the Commons chamber in Ottawa and others participating by video conference. An additional 4 days will be held at different times through the summer to allow cabinet ministers to be questioned on other issues. Well, a day after thousands of people descended on a Toronto park, police and bylaw officers were out in force to make sure it didn't happen again. Police Chief Mark Saunders said it was unacceptable for people to break physical distancing rules and to be publicly intoxicated. He noted that some members of the rowdy crowd that gathered on Saturday afternoon had urinated and defecated near homes. The crowds did not return on Sunday. Canadians have been self-isolating to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but that has proven problematic for those without a home. The founder of a homeless outreach team in Calgary says the city's homeless population has taken to sleeping under bridges, behind restaurants, in doorways, and in a small tent city across the Calgary drop-in center rather than visit a shelter. Chaz Smith says most shelters aren't accepting new people, and the homeless themselves are afraid of contracting the novel coronavirus if they do go in. The economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic is forcing Boeing to eliminate 400 positions at its Winnipeg facilities. The company says the reductions will come from voluntary and involuntary layoffs and normal attrition. In a statement, Boeing notes that it had previously announced that it would adjust the size of the company to reflect what it said were new market realities from the pandemic. Manitoba Hydro says it has struck a deal with 4 First Nations to end blockades at a northern construction site over COVID-19 concerns. When the utility said it had planned to rotate hundreds of employees and contractors out of the region and bring in new ones, the First Nations blocked entry to the project site. A spokesman for Manitoba Hydro says the utility is pleased to have now reached an understanding which will allow the construction to continue safely. 2 days after North Carolina recorded its largest daily increase in COVID-19 cases, U.S. President Donald Trump wants its governor to immediately agree that the Republican National Convention can be held there in August with full attendance. President Trump tweeted his call to the state's Democratic governor this morning. Governor Roy Cooper allowed the state to enter a second phase of gradual reopening on Friday, but says the state must continue to closely watch virus trends and has ordered entertainment venues, gyms, and bars to remain closed. The Chinese city of Wuhan has conducted more than 6.5 million coronavirus tests over a 10-day period in a bid to test all its 11 million residents, according to state media on Monday. No new COVID-19 cases have been reported since the 10-day campaign started, though some people with no symptoms did test positive. The campaign was launched after a cluster of 6 cases was discovered in one residential compound. Wuhan, where the global pandemic is believed to have started late last year, was by far the city hit hardest in China. Meanwhile, South Korea says it plans to send 370,000 face masks to tens of thousands of South Korean-born adoptees living in the West to help them weather the coronavirus. The foreign ministry said its diplomatic missions will work with dozens of international adoptee groups to distribute the masks to adoptees in 14 countries, including the United States, Canada, Australia, and some European nations. The ministry said it had initially planned to send 100,000 masks, but decided to expand the supplies because most South Korean adoptees were sent abroad as infants during the 1970s and 1980s and are now old enough to have their own children. The European Union's top diplomat wants the bloc to have a more robust strategy toward China now that Asia is appearing to be replacing the United States as the center of global power. EU Foreign Affairs Chief Josep Borrell said in a speech today that the arrival of an Asian century predicted by analysts is now happening in front of our eyes. Mr. Borrell said the pandemic can be seen as a turning point in the power shift from west to east, and that for the EU, the pressure to choose sides is growing. A Syrian Kurdish official and a local news agency say traffic has returned to a major highway in northeastern Syria for the first time in 7 months. This follows Russian mediation to reopen parts of the road that were captured by Turkey-backed opposition fighters. Russian troops accompanied civilian cars between the two towns in the region on Monday. Turkish troops and allied Syrian fighters captured parts of the highway known as M4 in October. Russia and Turkey back rival sides in the Syrian conflict and have become the main power brokers in the war-torn country. Well, the first astronauts launched by SpaceX are breaking new ground for style with hip spacesuits, gull-wing Teslas, and a sleek rocket ship, all white with black trim. The color coordinating is thanks to Elon Musk, the driving force behind both SpaceX and Tesla, and a big fan of Flash and science fiction. NASA astronauts are set to lift off on Wednesday with the first manned flight from NASA's Kennedy Space Center since the last shuttle flight in 2011. Well, that'll do it for today's news update. I'm Nima Rajan. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.